Hey, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us on the Thursday Night Hockey Show tonight. Thank you to my viewers on TikTok. If you're out there, give me a press the screen and give me some likes. Helps boost the algorithm of people and draws people into the live stream. If you're on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, all the other stuff, give us a like, share, subscribe. Let people know that you're watching the show and help build the audience and get more interaction. Got the chat bubble up on this side. If you want to give us some comments over on this side, I'll try and see them. I'm an old guy, so I'm kind of blind. I can't really see a whole lot of crap that goes on down on the screen, but I really appreciate all you joining us tonight. It is the penultimate day of the NHL season. We've got a very busy game night in the NHL. Um, Tonight's games, all these game times start at 7 p.m. Eastern. So we've got Boston at Montreal. Boston is having a season, and they're playing their rivals. Montreal are having a bit of a down season this year, last couple season actually, but whenever those teams get together, it's going to be kind of interesting. I don't know who else can be playing for Boston because there really is nothing left for the Bruins to do. They've got the record in points. They've got the record in wins. Um, yeah, there's really not much for them. So get some bodies rested up. They do have a few days off between now and the start of the playoffs on Monday, so or Tuesday, whenever they're slated to go. Still don't know who they're going to play. We'll get to that in a little bit. New Jersey's in Washington. The big news out of this one, well, one, New Jersey needs to win it to try and force Carolina's hand in the playoff race to try and win the Metropolitan Division. Um, and Alexander Ovechkin may not play tonight. I haven't seen anything on uh, the last I heard that it was kind of a game time decision for the Capitals. Toronto is at New York, a battle of two playoff teams. This should be an interesting one. Not really much to play for either team. They've secured their positions. Toronto, the two seed in the Atlantic, and the Rangers are the three seed in the Metro. So this will be an interesting matchup just to see where these guys are at. I don't know who they're if they're going to be playing everybody tonight. It's the last game of the season, gives them a few more extra days, so it might be a Toronto Marlies versus Hartford Wolfpack battle. I have no idea. Ottawa is in Buffalo to take on the Sabres. Sabres home finale. They do have one game tomorrow night, but home finale for the Buffalo Sabres. We'll talk about their demise this season. Sadly, I, as a Buffalo Sabres fan, have to bury them one more time. So, um, but although nothing bad, I'm not going to roast them for what they did this season. Carolina and Florida. This is going to be a really good game because both teams have a lot to play for. Florida does needs to win this game so they don't have to play Boston in the first round. Carolina needs to win this game because if they don't, New Jersey can pass them because New Jersey holds the tiebreakers. And we'll go into that in a little bit. And then Detroit is in Tampa. Tampa needs to win this game because they've lost four in a row, and you don't want to be on a 5-game skid heading into the playoffs. And Detroit's probably not too, keen on stacking points at this point. Um, they don't want to pass, like Ottawa and Buffalo, and lose some draft positioning. So I don't think Detroit's going to be too hard of an opponent for the Tampa Bay Lightning, but Tampa needs to up its game because they have been sliding going into the playoffs. They lost the other night to two backup goaltender for Toronto, despite shooting like almost 50 shots in the game. So that's where we're at with the early games of the hockey slate. The later games, we've got three tiers of games tonight. So the middle tier games, these are all the Central Mountain Time Zone games. 8 o'clock start. Winnipeg is at Colorado. Colorado needs to win this one to keep in both the well, actually they're out of the division, the conference race. But Winnipeg needs to win this one to keep in the division race against the Dallas Stars. Winnipeg has secured wild card two, so there's not much for them to play for other than to get themselves ready to the playoffs. St. Louis is in Dallas. Dallas needs to win this game to kind of put the screws to the Colorado Avalanche to put the pressure on them so that Colorado can uh, uh, keep Colorado out of that first place position. Minnesota is in Nashville. Nashville put up a great fight going towards the end of the season, despite being massive sellers at the trade deadline. They were in the conversation into the final week. Minnesota has locked themselves into uh, the Central Division's third place, so they'll be traveling to whoever finishes second. Um, Philadelphia is in Chicago at 8:30 tonight. This game is notable because this is going to be the final game in a Chicago sweater for Jonathan Taves, and we'll talk about that in a moment. 9 p.m. We've got San Jose at Edmonton. Edmonton needs to win this one to continue to put pressure on Vegas for not only first place in the division, the Pacific Division, but to actually take first place overall in the Western Conference and secure home ice advantage through the Western Conference Final and perhaps the Stanley Cup Final if the Boston Bruins falter. So um, and then we have got late night action. There's some interesting games going on here. Not so much the LA versus Anaheim, although LA needs to win this game to maintain third place in the Pacific Division. Vancouver and Arizona, two teams that are out of the playoffs. But it's the final game at Mullet Arena this season, the temporary home of the Arizona Coyotes. I've actually liked that they've been playing at this arena. Yeah, it's 5,000 seats. Yeah, it's small for an NHL arena, but they fill it and it's got a good atmosphere. And then the final game of the night is 10:30 Vegas at Seattle. This is a very interesting game. Vegas fighting for first place overall in the conference, first place overall in the division, and Seattle actually has a chance to move out of the wild card and catch LA for that final position in the Pacific Division and avoid going up against either Vegas or Colorado or Dallas. So, but we'll talk about the playoff permutations here in a minute. There's some news. Last week, there was the first time we ever had all 32 teams in action on the same day. So that was really cool to see all those games. Almost that many tonight. We've got 15 games. All but two games, or all but two teams are in action, and both of those teams have played their final game of the regular season. Calgary's played their final game of the season. They were eliminated from the playoffs this week, finishing 2 points behind, at least 2 points behind Winnipeg. And then the Islanders won last night, securing the one of the wild card positions in the Eastern Conference. We'll see where they end up going. Um, let's see. Hockey Down Under. Very exciting news announced by Gary Bettman this week that hockey is going to Australia in the preseason next year. LA and Arizona are going down to play at Rod Laver Arena in Melbourne, and that game is I've seen pictures of this arena. It seems like it's kind of like a hybrid indoor-outdoor arena. So it's almost like a technically a outdoor game, but it is a covered arena. So it's where they play the Australian Open. It's the main court. There are two big courts, but this is the main court of the Australian Open. So it'll be interesting to see kind of early outdoor hockey. Now you're saying, oh well, Melbourne in September. Remember, Southern Hemisphere is going to be winter, so they're going to be a little bit cooler temperatures there. So it may be good for an outdoor arena, or at least partially outdoor arena. Um, but yeah, I'm excited to see that. The press announcement saw talked about the Kings and the Coyotes being two young up and coming teams. Not so much for the Coyotes yet, but I mean, they've outperformed my expectations this season. So, maybe that gulf between them and the playoffs in the Western Conference isn't as big as we thought. And plus, they are going to be drafting like half the NHL draft this year. So, what's going to happen with the NHL with the Arizona Coyotes is going to be very interesting over the next few years because they've got a ton of draft capital. Whether they turn some of that capital into trades for good players, there's always that rumor about Austin Matthews. If if the Leafs flame out in the first round, there could be a lots of changes going on in Toronto. Um, and right now, the Arizona Coyotes do have the draft capital to make something kind of interesting with with Austin Matthews. Um, I still think it's a little too early before Matthews entertain, or at least the Leafs entertain a trade for Austin Matthews, but Arizona definitely has the capital for it. The Kings, of course, have been coming. They're, even if they falter a little bit down the stretch and finish in the wild card position, this is second straight season they've made the playoffs. They've got a good young core. They got some decent veterans as well. So we'll see how the LA Kings move into next season, whether some of their young prospects can take the next step as well. So very excited for that, to see the NHL expand down into Australia. They've done games in Asia. They've done games in Europe, and I'm sure they've got. Having looked at the global series for next year, who's going to Europe and who isn't, but yeah, very excited to expand the game, uh, expand the global reach of the game, expands the money that comes into the game, will help the Australian National Hockey League um, get some more followers. So it's very cool to see that happening, and nothing but good stuff for the NHL out of that. So yeah, by virtue of the Islanders winning last night, all of the playoff spots have been claimed. Right now, all we have to do is talk about seeding. Seeding, it's very mixed up. In fact, the NHL put out on Twitter who all has clinched spots if the playoffs started today. Um, there, we know all 16 teams. We just don't know where they're going to land. We know that Boston is going to be the first place team in the Atlantic Division. They have home ice throughout the playoffs as long as they last in the playoffs. So, keep going, Boston, if you can. The Maple Leafs and the Tampa Bay Lightning have wrapped up 2 and 3 in the division, and will face each other in the first round. The winner of that series will face the winner of the Boston and the Wild Card Two series, which is to be decided tonight. So those haven't been decided. The Metro first place uh, in the division has not been decided. The Wild Card One has not been decided. Metro 2 has not been decided, but the Rangers are locked into that third place position in the Metro division. Wild card one, Central one, uh, and we Central one will be the second place team of the conference essentially. Um, Pacific one will win the uh, Western Division or Western Conference, but we'll get into those in a moment. But Central two, we don't know. Pacific one and two, we do not know. And then of course Pacific three, we don't know because of what's going on with Seattle and the LA Kings. Wild card two has been decided. That is going to be the Winnipeg Jets. They will face the Western Conference winner. So um, but yeah, let's get in. Well, let's talk about a couple other things. We talked about Jonathan Tay's final game as a Blackhawk, very storied career for the captain of the Blackhawks. There's no word, and it does sound like he's going to come back next season. It's just going to be in a different sweater, which, along with Patrick Kane in a Ranger sweater, is going to look weird for a little bit. But there's teams that need veteran help, veteran leadership. My Sabres could use it, although the dance card for the Sabres as far as the forward ranks is filling up, and they've got veteran leadership. But a guy like Jonathan Taves will be very good in the room for a lot of those young guys. But I'm sure Taves is going to want to go to a team that's like a Boston that's going to compete for a Stanley Cup for sure. Rather than going into kind of not even a rebuilding situation, but a team that's just trying to make the playoffs. So, speaking of the Boston Bruins, what a hell of a season, man. They've made a strong case that this is the best regular season of all time. They have 133 points, which is more than the Montreal Canadiens. Although I will point out that the 1976 Montreal Canadiens that they beat only played 80 games. So, and they didn't have shootout wins. If the game ended in regulation tied, it was tied. So, um, they got the 1 point for the tie, but didn't have the opportunity to win in overtime or in a shootout. So that kind of held down their points. People will tell you that that really watched hockey in the '70s will still tell you that Montreal is the best team of all time. Those late '70s Scotty Bowman Montreal Canadian teams were just devastating. Um, but Boston, they've set the wins record in a season. They have set the points record. This is could go down as the most epic season of all time. The only problem for the Bruins is you've got to win the Stanley Cup. If you lay down this season and say you get to the conference finals and flame out, no one's people will talk about the points and teams will shoot to surpass the points, but no one's going to mention Boston as one of the greatest teams of all time if they don't, close a deal. And if they can close a deal, then we can start having that discussion of who's the best team of all time. That 76, 77 Montreal Canadiens team that only had to win 12 games en route to the 77 Cup, but they, won 60 games and only lost, I think, 8 in regulation. So, and they didn't have overtime losses. So, only 8 losses that entire season, 12 ties. If Boston can win the Stanley Cup and do it in convincing fashion, there's going to be a really good debate on that. But Montreal still, because they won the cup, because it's still outstanding with Boston, we're going to give Montreal the best season of all time. But we'll keep our eyes on the Boston Bruins. All right, so like I said, lots of stuff to be decided in the next 24 to 48 hours. Um, we've got 15 games tonight. On Friday, we've got 2 games. Buffalo is going to be in Columbus. Really going to be a pride game for Columbus or for Buffalo. Columbus is, they're playing for the tank, and we'll get into how that tank battle is looking. And then the Colorado Avalanche are in Nashville. That's going to mean something if Colorado has a chance to win the Central Division. If Dallas wins tonight and Colorado loses tonight, then perhaps Colorado rests their players knowing that they've got that 2-3 matchup against Minnesota. Um, but if they go in tomorrow night tied on points or, you know, with the ability to overtake Dallas, then we've got ourselves a good race there. So there may be something to play for tomorrow night at 8 p.m. in Nashville. But let's talk about the divisions right now. Boston has clinched the Atlantic Division. Um, this is the only division that's really decided anything. So Boston's clinched. Tampa and Toronto are in round one with Toronto hosting. This happened last year. Until Toronto can prove that they can get past one round. If they flame out in the first round, all bets are off with this franchise. I'm thinking that I was thinking this last year, but if they flame out again, they've got to clean house as far as their leadership goes. Kyle Dubas, probably Sheldon Keefe, and what happens from there with Toronto is kind of a wild card. Do they close the window, rebuild, try and build with different because they can get a lot of stuff for the players that they have. Somebody's going to want Mitch Marner. Somebody's going to want to ask Austin Matthews. Heck, some people will still want guys like Johnny Tavares. So, what can Toronto get if things go sideways? But yeah, so Atlantic Division is completely set, but that's the only one. Tonight, division winners in the Metropolitan will be decided. Carolina right now leads 111 points to 110 points from New Jersey. Carolina can win with a win, a loss and a New Jersey loss, or an OT shootout loss and a New Jersey loss. OG, OG, New Jersey needs Carolina to drop a point tonight and win. Anyway, that happens because if New Jersey finishes even with Carolina on points, then Carolina will lose out based off of the tie-breaking regulation wins marker. I think Carolina or New Jersey has a couple more regulation wins than the Carolina Hurricanes. So New Jersey would win the division. They would host one of the wild card teams in round one, and uh, Carolina would have to go to or would host the Rangers in round 1 in Raleigh, or vice versa. New Jersey loses, doesn't win the division. They host the Rangers, which I think is going to be a very difficult matchup for the New Jersey Devils because it's essentially a complete home series for the New York Rangers. Let's see. Division winner in the Central still needs to be decided. This is how this works out. Dallas right now leads Colorado 106 points to 105 points. Colorado can catch Dallas, even if Dallas wins tonight. Dallas has to win tonight. Hopes that Colorado drops 1 point out of their final 2 games, and that's because Dallas holds the tiebreaker on regulation wins. Um, so if Colorado wins tonight, has an OT loss tomorrow night, then Colorado still finishes second. Um, so Dallas can really put pressure on Colorado by winning tonight. But Colorado, if Dallas loses, good chance that Colorado wins the division, gets first place in the Central, and then hosts the wild card one in the first round of the playoffs. Loser will host Minnesota in round one. Minnesota is locked into that third round or third place position. Finally, division winner in the Pacific. Vegas leads Edmonton by two points. Vegas must finish ahead of Edmonton. Edmonton has far more regulation wins, so they hold that number one tiebreaker. The loser, we don't know who they host in round one because that third place position in the Pacific Division hasn't been decided. So, talking about the Pacific Division, um, well, let's talk about the Western Conference. The only team that can win the Western Conference is that Pacific Division winner. It's going to be either Vegas or Edmonton. Colorado can catch Vegas and Edmonton on points, but Vegas will have one more regulation win. Um, uh, and if it's tied on points, I think Edmonton wins anyway. So um, all four end up tied on points. Then Edmonton wins the Western Conference. They will take on Wild Card Two, which is Winnipeg. Either way, Winnipeg is going to have to travel west, either Vegas or Edmonton, to contest round one. As far as the wild cards go, yeah, we talked about Winnipeg clinching round wild card two. Wild card one in the West is going to be very interesting because Seattle right now is 2 points behind the LA Kings. The LA Kings have kind of slid going into the final games of the season. But I will tell you, the Seattle Kraken have been playing really good hockey. So, um, and they're coming. I'm thinking that whoever wins the division will be happy that if Seattle clinches the third place position in the Pacific, I mean they don't have to play in the first round. So um, they're going to be a very tough out in the wild card. Um, but yeah, so Seattle wins tonight. LA loses tonight. Seattle wins wins that third place position. Kings, the Kraken hold the tiebreaker in regulation wins. And then as far as the Eastern Conference wildcards, the Islanders are done. They played 83 or 82 games. They got 93 points. Right now. They're sitting in wild card one position, watching this Carolina Florida game. And either way this game goes, it's going to determine the fate of the New York Islanders. If Carolina wins, Florida finishes in that um, wild card two position. That means the Islanders will go to Carolina to contest round one. If the Panthers win, uh, then the Panthers will move up into wild card one, play the New Jersey Devils possibly or Carolina, depends on how the Devils do. Um, and then the Panthers will have to ship up to Boston, and God help their soul if they do that. They've had a really good run though. The Florida Panthers have been on fire down the stretch, and that young goaltender that they've got playing for them, Alex Lyon, who's kind of bounced around the league a little bit in his early career, um, has been phenomenal. Like uh, just shutting down teams, and we'll see if the Panthers can If he continues his play in the playoffs, again, either Carolina, New Jersey, or Boston will be a tough out for the Panthers. But I would say that their chances are better if they get New Jersey or Carolina than they do if they get Boston. Let's talk about the tank. So the tank right now, let me get the Friday game off here. The tank right now is uh, being led by the Columbus Blue Jackets. Columbus has played 80 games. Their opponents are at 81 games. They both play tonight. Um, Three teams can realistically win the tank at this point. It's Chicago, who are at 58 points. The uh, Anaheim Ducks, who are at 58 points as well, and then the Columbus Blue Jackets are at 57 points. This is the only game you can win by losing, and you don't really guarantee yourself much of anything. Although I was wrong about chances in the draft lottery. It's up to 25% for the team that finishes last, but the only teams that are eligible to win the draft lottery and pick first, get that Bedard pick, have to finish in the bottom 11. You can only move up 10 spots. But if you're 11th and you win the draft lottery, um, you probably don't have to win lottery or play the lotteries ever again because I don't think you can get that lucky again. Um, but yeah, so what happens tonight? Let's say in the next 2 games, the Columbus Blue Jackets pick up a point and everyone finishes tied, then Anaheim's gonna win the last place because they have the fewest regulation wins. So they'll jump into, the well, they'll finish dead last, which gives them the best chance at Connor Bedard. If the Columbus Blue Jackets lose both of their games in regulation in the last 2 games, they will win by losing. And for Chicago to get to finish dead last, they will have to lose tonight against Philadelphia, and then hope that Anaheim wins tonight or gets a point in overtime, or gets to overtime and gets a point in the standings, and the Columbus Blue Jackets pick up a couple points in a win or two overtime losses um, as we head into the final couple of games for the Columbus Blue Jackets because Chicago has won more regulation games, so they're locked right now. So that's where we're at as far as the tank goes. Columbus is the favorite right now, but if I'm Columbus, I hate the fact that I've still got 2 games left and everyone's on their final game tonight. Um, I don't expect a massive effort out of Columbus tomorrow night. Although uh, we expected that out of the Houston Texans and the NFL at the end of the regular season that they wouldn't put up an effort and get the first overall pick, where they're actually guaranteed to get the first overall pick if you finish dead last, and they won. So Sabres will have to bring their game tomorrow night. They'll have to bring their game tonight. But I think the Sabres are playing more for how do we close the gap on the playoffs? Let's finish with more points this season. They're really locked out of the Connor Bedard sweepstakes, so go ahead and stack points, even if it doesn't mean anything in the end, grand scheme of things. Um, it's just kind of a psychological thing for them. And we can go on to our Sabres beat at this point. Talking about my Sabres, we have to bury them for the 12th season in a row before the playoffs. That's a sad thing. It's, the New York Jets and the Buffalo Sabres have the 2 longest playoff droughts in sports right now. But both the Jets and the Sabres are at 12 seasons, which is depressing. It's sad to contemplate. It's a record in the NHL for futility of getting into the playoffs. Um, but I will say that at the beginning of the season, my goal for this team was to not be eliminated by US Thanksgiving. And they didn't get eliminated by US Thanksgiving, although they did try. They had an 8-game losing streak as they went into US Thanksgiving. Um, then my goal was okay, well, we got to US Thanksgiving. We're still in it. We had a good December. Let's see if we can be there, by the new year. We're still in, not swimming, circling the toilet. We got to New Year. Awesome. All right, let's set a new goal. Let's be in contention by the All Star break. Got to the All Star break. Had a good running streak going into the All Star break. Just before the All Star break, they lost the final game, but we're doing well. Okay, cool. Let's be in contention when we get to the trade deadline. We were in contention on the trade deadline. We were, you know, close to playoff position as the trade deadline rolled in. Um, we were never able to get any separation in that playoff race. We would hold wild card positions for a few hours until Pittsburgh would win and take that, knock us back. We were never able to get over that hump. Um, and then I said, okay, let's play some meaningful games in April. That would be awesome. We got to April. Sabres didn't get eliminated until 3 games left in the season when they lost to New Jersey. Although, really the worst loss was the loss to the, Florida Panthers the week before, a 2-1 regulation loss, uh, because based off the points that, no matter what happened after that loss, we would not have made the playoffs because, the Islanders are sitting at 93 points, the Panthers are sitting at 92 points. We would not have caught them. Um, uh, so yeah, right now the max that the Sabres can get is 91 points, and I hope they do it. I hope they pass Pittsburgh and can finish, ninth in the conference, and from there the sky's the limit. A lot of people say, well, they failed again. A lot of people were taking it out on, some of the older players, and yeah, absolutely. At some points in the season, the Sabres did not play well, especially defensively. They were a tire fire a lot of times in the season. I won't sugarcoat that. There were far too many times where somebody was just skating down the middle, wide open into the slot, and just taking shots on our goaltenders. Um, our teams are going to get better. There's so much hope for the future right now. There are 3 guys in Rochester right now that I'm pretty sure are going to make the Sabres out of camp next year. Lucas Rusek, who's going to play for the Sabres, I think is going to play for the Sabres tonight. He's been called up. Um, he'll play. Uh, uh, Names are escaping me right now. Yuri Kulik and Isaac Roseanne. Um, those 3 kids are phenomenal. I think they're going to be on the team full time. That means which 3 current Sabres are not going to be here next year. Frequent whipping boy, Victor Olofsson is probably going to be one of them. I think they trade him at some point for some defensive help. Um, Olofsson can score. He's got a phenomenal shot. Problem is he doesn't play a lot of defense. So if a team's looking for forward help, Victor Olofsson's your man. Come make Kevin Adams an offer and see what happens there. Um, they're going to have to bring in somebody on the defensive side. I don't know what happens with Kyle Okposo and Zemgus Girgensons. I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, they're old. Let's get rid of them." You know what? There were a lot of games where these guys were putting in the effort that you wish your first, second, third lines were doing. They're just tenacious on the puck, especially Girgensons. And Girgensons has been here for, I think he's been here every year of the crap. He was drafted the draft that you know, first draft where we started tanking, and I'd like to see him rewarded eventually getting into the playoffs with the Buffalo Sabres. I think that would be great. Um, I don't think he's played himself off the roster by any stretch of the imagination. He's one of those really gritty guys, the kind of guy that you want your young kids to learn off of. I think he's done wonderful things with he and Okposo have done wonderful things with Peyton Krebs. Peyton Krebs came into the league as, a guy that you thought would be just a massive scorer. Um, but he has really rounded out his defensive game. Um, But yeah, it's hard to tell who's not gonna be on this team next season, um, at least from the forward perspective. There's a couple places on the back end that they're gonna need improvement, but I think It's not so much that they need to improve the defense overall. I think defensively, the defensemen play in the right place. It's offensively, the guy that's the center is not coming back and covering the slot. Wingers are not covering their men driving in on a play. Um, that's where the defensive improvement needs to happen with the Buffalo Sabres. Um, but as far as the rest of the team, there's going to be some flux. Um, what happens with the goaltending situation? I believe Craig Anderson will retire, and that the battle between UPL and Eric Comrie next season to see who backs up Devin Levi. I think Devin Levi has done nothing to disabuse anyone of his status as being the Sabres' not only future in nets, but the current guy in nets. So his play down the stretch as a rookie, just coming out of college, has been phenomenal, and really happy with his play, and really looking forward to see a full season of Devin Levi. Now, the backup will have to play probably 30 games next season, just because Devin Levi has been playing college hockey. They get like 35 to 40 games a season, so he's going to have to. We're going to have a guy that can back up and take some meaningful minutes for the Sabres. Um, and who can do that? Who steps up? Is it UPL? Is it Comrie? Neither had phenomenal seasons. I think UPL was better than Comrie. He won Rookie of the Month in January. Still had, but he still finished with a sub 900 save percentage. So he has to improve his game if he wants to stick around with the Sabres. Comrie's going to have to improve his game if he wants to stick around the Sabres. And Kevin Adams is going to have a decision based off of who wins that battle. But um, if you're a Sabres fan and you've lived through the 12 years of disappointment, don't be too disappointed. This season went really well. I said at the beginning of the season that to make the playoffs, Sabres would have to improve by 20 points, 10 total wins, which is really hard. Only one team did that this year, and that was the New Jersey Devils. Well, maybe the Kraken did as well, but in the Eastern Conference, it was only the Devils. Um, but the Sabres got close, and they can get closer. They can get up to 91 points, which would be a 16-point improvement over the previous season. So 8 total win improvement. Um, at that point, if you improve by the same amount or even half as many, if you have 4 more wins next season, you're at 100, almost 100 points, and you are knocking on the door of top 3 in the division. So, just depending on how the other teams finish in the division as well, but, um, there's hope for the Sabres. This year was a little early for them to completely come together, but I like what they've got in the core. Like what they've got coming. I haven't even talked about Matt Savoy, who should be signing this summer, or should be coming to Rochester next season to play, and then because I think he's already signed, and then we've got whoever we're drafting this year. We've got some Russian players that had a tough first season, but that's usually the case for overseas players having a tough first season, getting used to smaller ice. So we'll see how they develop. And but yeah, the future's bright for the Sabres. I think they're, when you in 5 years you could be looking at a Stanley Cup final between the Arizona Coyotes and the Buffalo Sabres, which I'm sure would drive Gary Bettman crazy, um, but would be fantastic for non-traditional markets. So, well, at least for Arizona, Buffalo is a very traditional market. So. Anyway, that's it for this regular season. Next week, we're going to be talking playoff hockey, going through each of the divisions, the playoff series. Um, Not hearing much about our teams that have dearly departed us this regular season and will not be taking part in the playoffs. So the shows will be a little bit shorter. We will talk about who won the tank next week, and we'll wait until May 8th for the draft lottery to see who officially gets Connor Bedard. and who else, who gets to pick over the rest of the draft class. But anyway, thanks everyone for watching the show tonight. Thanks for the folks on TikTok for giving us 480 likes. That's awesome. Thanks for those folks who are watching over on. We've got people on Facebook and we got people on Twitch. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And we will talk to everyone in a week. Take care, everybody.